This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. It's episode 738. And this week we welcome Kevin Kennedy, good old Kevin Kennedy, love you, babe, to talk about the Healthy Homes Initiative. Where has it been and where is it going? Kevin Kennedy is a legend in the Healthy Homes movement and continues to educate people around the country on the importance of healthy housing. Before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. They're the reason we can continue doing the show. And don't forget, after the show, you can continue the discussion on afterthoughts.iaqradio.com. IAQ Radio Association sponsors are AIHA, the American Industrial Hygiene Association, at AIHA.org. IICRC, the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, at IICRC.org. The Restoration Industry Association, RIA, at restorationindustry.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA, at EIA-USA.org. Actionable Insights at getinsights.org. IAQ Radio industry sponsors are Particles Plus at particlesplus.com. BioPlanet at byoplanet.com.
And now you can win a cool prize. It's time for the IAQ Radio Trivia question. Be the first to correctly answer. Simply email your answer to czlotnick at cs.com. Or if listening live, just text your answer from your computer. And now, here's the Z-Man.
All right, no Z-Man today, unfortunately, but I'm going to do the trivia question. So I want you to tell me, who was Kevin Kennedy's boss and mentor at Children's Mercy, Kansas City, and what was the last date he was on IAQ Radio? Ooh. All right, so you got to do a little research. Anyway, Kevin Kennedy has 30 years experience, over 30, as an environmental health scientist, including 21 years at Children's Mercy, Kansas City, where he retired in 2023. At Children's Mercy, he led the establishment of the Environmental Health Program. The program has assessed thousands of homes and schools, providing patient families, childcare, and schools with resources to assist them in identifying and reducing indoor environmental exposures that may result in health problems for children. Welcome back, Kevin. Always great to have you.
Thank you very much. So glad to be here. Always a pleasure to meet with you, Joe, and meet with, I see the names of everybody in your modern Zoom platform here, and I see a lot of familiar names, familiar faces, and people who, they intimidate me with their knowledge, their wisdom, their expertise, really true experts in the world, some of these folks. So it's really great.
One of the nice things about the program, we get some really top-notch people in the audience and a lot of them have been on the show as well. All right, so fill us in, Kevin. 2023, you retired from Children's Mercy. What have you been up to since?
Well, it's funny how once you retire from some place, people come out of the woodwork looking for you. So I'm not really retired.
Including your past employer?
No, they haven't been looking for me too much. But I still collaborate with them, so I shouldn't rule them out completely. I am still a research scientist working part-time on a grant that I will actually mention too. It's some really fascinating work that I've talked to you about before. But as soon as I rolled off working for Children's Mercy, I continued to teach. We were teaching and training folks for a long time related to healthy home work and assessing houses for environmental health and safety risks and teaching people how to do that. That's always been one of my passions. And then I now work as a consultant for EPA through one of their subcontractors and work closely with Kate Hastings. For those of you that know Kate Hastings, a brilliant consultant and specialist in facilitation. And I've served as an advisor to HUD on all of their healthy home initiatives, training. I help with their grantee orientations with the conferences, teach a lot of practical stuff for the conferences. It's all good. The difference is not having that, that schedule where you've got to show up somewhere.
That 9 to 5 thing.
That's exactly right.
Although you guys worked more than 9 to 5, I have to say. I mean, I got a shout out to Luke Guard here. That man, you can't turn him off. He just keeps working.
Still working. Well, and I know some of the people who are listening right now, looking at the names again, it's not a job, it's a career. You dedicate yourself to a career, and you do what you need to finish a research paper or a study, to get a grant out, to get all the curriculum ready for teaching a class. You do whatever you need to try to be successful and make sure the work that you do is the best it can be, which means late night hours, sometimes, rarely, but sometimes overnight hours too. So, that's part of the process.
How, you've been doing this for over 30 years now. How have things changed in your mind in the environmental health world since you started in the field?
Well, that's a great question, because I actually started as a analytical chemist, spectroscopist, and industrial hygiene chemist for an environmental engineering firm. And that's actually where I met Luke Guard, who you just mentioned. So Luke and I were both analytical chemists there, and we spent our formative years there. And it was just really getting formalized as a industry beyond the industrial hygiene world. When I stepped into the work for the hospital, interestingly, and I see that Don Weeks provided some information for your quiz. So does that mean I can go ahead and mention somebody's name?
Yes, sir.
All
Don
right.
got the trivia quiz correct.
So when I was hired at the hospital by Dr. Portnoy, he immediately, as those of you who know him, immediately got me involved in a variety of things, including research and going to conferences, presenting at conferences. And at that time, about 10 to 20% of allergists believed that environment played a role in allergic disease. Wow. And it was through his dedication, other allergists who understood the role of environment. There weren't very many, but through his dedication, through his work, through collaborations, through things like the practice parameters that I see David Miller's on, that we worked on, things that built the evidence base, along with new science and new research that has occurred, and some that I can even point to, and the new genomics, epigenetics, all these things that hint at mechanisms for how environmental exposures affect people. But he really had to be out there convincing people and getting me involved. And I would go to a conference to talk about the role of environment, and there might be 10 people at my session in the early years. By the time that role switched, some 10, 15 years later, I was talking to 1,000 people at one of the allergy meetings. So, wow. So clearly an evolution on the medical side and understanding that role. And interestingly, surveys of pediatricians show they understand that for their patients, the environment that child spends time in plays an important role in their health and long-term well-being and any kind of chronic health conditions they might have. That is not true of general practitioners. Less than half of them believe that the home or the environment that a person spends time in plays some kind of a role in their health and well-being, which is really surprising.
Still to this day, huh?
Well, the last survey I saw was probably about 5 years old. So just before COVID. I think COVID really opened a lot of people's eyes as far as A, how viruses are passed as aerosols, B, how all sorts of microbes and things are passed, and then the combination of exposure to biological microbial sources and the chemical sources, the whole soup that people now grow up in. And there's so much, and you know this, you've had the people on about indoor chemistry in buildings or really in homes. And obviously my focus is on kids. And the combination of things that they're exposed to can make the impact so much worse. And we're only now starting to understand that here in the last 10 years, even though that exposure has occurred over decades. We call them the indoor generation. Anyone under 40 years old grew up indoors. And there was a fascinating research study that Dr. Platts-Mills wrote about the history of asthma. And one of the things he points to that was a significant change 40 or 50 years ago was the advent of television, of entertainment, of kids being drawn in from outside to sit inside, and that sitting, that immobility, and the lack of full respiration, he suggests, had something to do with the increase in chronic respiratory diseases. And it's a fascinating study to look up, and I'm happy to give people a link to that. It's really interesting. So what's changed is, and I think others might agree with this, is we're you and me and maybe a lot of the audience, we're growing beards. We're an older generation. There's a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge out there, and we're retiring. And there's a lot of new energy, but we need so much more, because we now understand the impact of indoor environments, the importance of indoor air quality, more than we ever had. The science is so much clearer now than it's ever been. And yet we don't have anywhere near the people we need in the workforce to take advantage, A, of federal dollars that are coming hard and fast through Inflation Reduction Act, and B, because there's so much work related to improvement of homes that needs someone with the right knowledge and background to advise and make recommendations for appropriate upgrades or renovations that are going to improve the environment. And through the classes that I teach, now thousands of people have gone through these classes, and here in the last 2 to 3 years, the thing I've noticed that's really surprised me is the sheer number of students who are either brand new to the field. That maybe I've had people who my class is their first day of their new job.
Wow.
So lots of new people to the field, which is a wonderful thing. But the other problem is they come to the field with little or no knowledge, not only of indoor air quality or indoor environmental science, but also of residential construction or building systems. I think many of your audience would agree with me fundamentally that you have to have, I think, to do good consulting, advising, investigative work related to environmental exposures, you've got to have a sense of how buildings are built, what the systems are that support them, airflow pathways, pressure dynamics. There's all sorts of factors that you're trying to understand as you look at this building and how it might potentially be impacting either one person or all the people who are in that occupied space. And these people don't, many of them, and they are passionate, but many of them don't have that that kind of background. So my class is really enlightening to them, and I get, and I'm not trying to boost my ego. I get good evaluations, and I think, I do think I do a good job, but I really think a part of it is the information is so new and interesting to them that they're excited about it. They're really excited about learning this new information, and we really need more educators out promoting and teaching indoor environmental classes.
Now, we talked earlier in the week, and you mentioned it's not just the workforce, it's the government agencies. Many of them, you were telling me, I can't remember what it was, how many of these people are just brand new to this whole industry and the whole idea of healthy homes, and yet they're going to be making policy in a few years.
That's right, and I couldn't put a number on it, but I can say that HUD has seen their funding double, and for some brief legislative periods, depending on the politics in Washington, D.C., they've seen it even triple. They've seen significant increases in the research budget. We're now working on we've had 3 of their healthy home production grants in my work at the hospital, and we're now on our 4th research grant. So they're out there providing funding. HUD that's one example. EPA, through the environmental justice legislation and a huge amount of money that came to EPA related to environmental justice to specifically target low-income, high-risk communities with a wide array of funding to address community needs, housing needs, infrastructure needs, whatever that might be associated with long-term health disparities and environmental injustices. And they set up technical centers for each EPA region to help people apply for these grants. So there's an opportunity there, and some of the healthy housing work is going on there. Then through my good work, and I see Larry's on here, my good work with BPI, going way back now 10 years ago on some of the education and certifications, we've seen an increase in the interest and the number of people in the workforce who want to apply healthy housing principles in the work they do on the home performance and weatherization side. And that's another place through the Inflation Reduction Act where there's just a tremendous amount of funding coming down the pipeline related specifically to training of workforce, of contractors. I mean, tens of millions of dollars that are available for workforce development through different components of the Inflation Reduction.
Yeah, you mentioned BPI, the Building Performance Institute, I believe is what the acronym stands for. Are the government people that come into your classes, are they even familiar with the fact that a group like BPI exists?
They know that they exist, but historically they have understood them to be more energy focused, and which they have. They provided professional standards and certifications related to the building performance, and then to certification of the workforce that does that work. And they have a long track record of incredible success that started, a big piece of that started with the ARA funding and getting, that's another example. If you think about the workforce that we had to try to train because we had all of this new money coming available, the same thing's happening right now. So some of them are aware of who BPI it was, and they now understand because of my class that there are healthy home references, there are healthy home certifications that may be available. And the other side of that is BPI offers a really good class called Building Science Principles, which is another area that these people have little or no training in. And personally, I have found a lot of indoor environmental consultants don't have any training in building science either. They haven't had that formal education related to how building systems work and how they impact the indoor environment.
Well, there aren't any courses out there that I'm aware of other than what you're doing in BPI now.
Well, BPI does have an online building science course, and Larry, of course, is on here. He could answer anybody's questions or follow up in the chat if people wanted that. But so they do offer that, and anybody could go through that. And what you're suggesting, and I think this is absolutely a good idea, is that these new professionals should take a building science course. Anybody, any indoor environmental professional should have some kind of a basic building science course. Now, that's another example of something that's changed in the industry. When you and I started in this field, the concept of building science didn't exist.
That's true.
People had an idea, but it's become now a formal discipline thanks to some of the world's experts like Terry Brennan and Joe Steebrook and some others, including some that are on this call here. But,
yeah, and Joe still does his building science courses too, which is another Building Science Corporation, buildingscience.com, I think is the website.
Yeah, and those are geared more towards the commercial buildings and a little less towards the residential, whereas BPI's, you could say BPI's courses are geared towards the common workforce, the people who do weatherization work, building contractors, and other people who touch houses who might need the basic concepts. And I would suggest to you that also would include indoor environmental professionals and consultants as well. All right.
You've spent your career focused on children's health and healthy homes, and a lot of our listeners don't have that background. Give us a quick summary of the difference between adult and childhood healthy homes issues.
Now, is that something I can share my screen for? So I did throw together some slides in case we wanted to use them. So I think everybody can see this, right?
While you're doing that, I'm going to find my book from
All right.
BPI.
Well,
I
I
think
think as
everybody should get.
a tiny bit of background to everybody who doesn't know me. So I'm one of those people, and I see many on the call here who are just like me. There's this chasm between building research and building practice, and I've spent my life in that chasm, in that space, doing some of the research or benefiting from the research of others, and then trying to translate that into protocols, procedures, interventions, things that might improve the environment. So my role has been in between the two, and focused on children's health. That's where I've spent most of my career, is focusing on children's health. So another way to look at that is, and the problem with our research over the past 30, 40 years is that we've allowed our children to serve as canaries. We study them and the impacts on them and the health outcomes as a result of that exposure. My role has been to try to understand enough of that research to use that to guide what we do about the environment, and not use the kids as some kind of a canary for that. So it's important for people to understand, because there's lots of focus now on indoor air quality, indoor environment of buildings, and looking at common standards and practices like ASHRAE guidance. But the problem with that is it's assuming adults. It's not thinking about children. And here's an example on this slide, that little Jeremy is not like big Jeremy. There are huge differences between children and adults as just their normal biological functions. Kids eat more foods, have higher metabolism, drink more liquid, breathe more air, have a lung volume significantly higher than adults. Their respiration rate is 2 to 3 times an adult. So the average adult takes about 21,000 breaths in a day, and a 24-hour period, and the average kid takes 2 to 3 times that, so maybe 50,000 breaths in a given day. So all of these are natural behavior factors and part of their development. At the same time, they're young children. And young children over time accumulate risk. So if they are exposed to different stressors as young children, those stressors build up in their system. They lead to a magnified impact of the environmental effects, combined with the genetic effects, combined with whatever thing is in their indoor environments, whether it's biological, whether it's chemical, all of that mixes together along with these psychosocial factors to really inhibit their ability to develop into a contributing member of society.
You know, it's interesting. I just want to tie this back to a comment in the chat from Paula Shanka. Post-COVID, with all the well-meaning but not effective disinfecting protocols in schools, have added to exposures and respiratory issues for both staff and students. Looking at that last slide kind of make me think about that a little differently. You know, those kids are being exposed and they're breathing, 3 times more. They're inhaling whatever residuals from that disinfecting protocol. And it really kind of opened my eyes a little bit to. Thank you, Paula.
Yeah. Well, poison control calls went up by 50% in March and April of 2020.
Wow.
Just because of people panicking and a gross overuse of disinfectants and using antibacterials, thinking that they might work on viruses. People were just using anything and everything, and that led to unnecessary exposures. Well, so another key part of this, ASHRAE and those who are thinking about the strategies for indoor air quality and thermal comfort, use a more traditional view. And I like this illustration from Layla and Hagashima. This is looking at it from a child's perspective or a school's perspective. There are so many other factors that affect kids related to their comfort than affect adults. With adults, we're thinking about the radiant heat from them, their metabolism, their ability to use insulation to control how much heat they can retain. We're thinking about air movement. We're thinking about temperature and humidity. With kids, there are so many other things beyond those that that we have to include. So thermal comfort is the inner circle there, but for kids, the outer circle is strongly associated with the benefit of those inner circle factors that contribute to their health and well-being.
Interesting.
And
Interesting.
the amazing, go ahead.
I'm just curious on this whole thermal comfort thing has become a big issue here recently. Are you seeing that being brought more into the discussion when it comes to healthy homes?
Oh, absolutely. So in the time that we've been doing this work, the original healthy home principles that everybody might remember were clean, dry, pest-free, contaminant-free, safe, ventilated, and maintained. And that was through a large portion of the history. Then after the ARA funding, the focus on energy efficiency, weatherization, there was a recognition that a key part of healthy homes is thermal control. And BPI defines that, and I completely agree with them, as comfort. So there's an added keep it principle that you'll find described by different agencies different ways. Keep it climate controlled, keep it thermally controlled, or with BPI, keep it comfortable. I like keep it comfortable because that's the health effect. And that's one of the major health effects of housing and one of the first things people complain about is their comfort. And what do they complain about? Whether it's too hot or too cold. Of all the healthy home principles, mortality is most strongly associated with keeping it comfortable, with thermal control. The seniors struggle in heat waves, cold snaps, power outages. That's where you see the highest mortality among seniors because they do not have the ability to maintain their internal body temperature when it's too cold, or they can't release heat when it's too hot, and they don't have the resources. They tend to stay in that house. House gets overheated. They do, and nobody knows that they're there. It's a whole series of tragic events that have led to that. So comfort, thermal control has become one of the critical things to think about, especially as we're starting to think about energy efficiency, as we're thinking about decarbonization and some of these other factors that are hot topics, both in the industry and in some of the research.
You know, this next slide you have up here really is eye-opening. 40%.
Yeah, that's why I added that here. I don't think people understand that we have seen over the course of the 40 years, the indoor generation, and you all know this. You may have grandkids because you're old like me, or you have kids. It is so common now for kids to have some kind of chronic disease, or more than one, maybe perhaps two or three, that it's just assumed. So imagine you've got a school with 2,000 elementary kids, and in some communities, 25% of them now have asthma.
Wow.
25%. That means 500 of the kids in that school have asthma medications that nurse has to maintain.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I used to coach years ago basketball, but then not recently, like 10 years ago, I went back and helped the local junior high team. I had never had a kid with an inhaler.
Right.
And that
right.
team, 1/3 of the kids had an inhaler. It was amazing. I mean, it was just in the real world out there where I'm dealing with. I saw that, and I'm sure others do too.
Well, and that's become the reality. Now, here's a fascinating slide I want to show you, and people can look up this study. So there's a new area of science called cell danger response. And believe me, I'm not an expert on this, but it's a fascinating study here. But what they point to is there are now, we understand a lot of the chronic health disorders, and we've been able to give them a diagnosis just because of better medicine, better science, genomics, all these other factors. But along with that, we've seen them increase in that 40-year period some 2 to 100 times in the portion of the population that's impacted by these things. And one of the proposals, and this is relatively new in the last 4 or 5 years, this cell danger response, the way to think of this is all of your cells have mitochondria. The mitochondria are what provide energy to your cells. through the production or use of ATP. So they're using this molecule, this energy molecule, to create a cellular energy. But it turns out there's a couple of other mechanisms that the mitochondria provide. One of them is this cell danger response. So they convert from providing energy to defending the cell, but again, using ATP. But what can also happen is there's a third stage where the mitochondria freeze, they call it, and they freeze in this decision making based on certain kinds of internal exposure inside the body. And if you read through some of these studies, and some of them who are on with us now may be able to give you some of the mechanisms, and they do explain them in a very elaborate way in these studies. But what we're starting to understand is it isn't just being exposed to something and the health threats associated with that environmental exposure. It is the combination of that environmental exposure and how the mitochondria respond to it. And for some people, the health impact is your internal body response, not the actual contaminant that led to the body response. So it's like your defense systems are turning on themselves, are turning on your body to create these health problems. And they're starting to understand that some of these contaminants, that's what they're doing to you. That's the mechanism. And if we can find a way to shut off or encourage the cells to not be in that frozen step, but to convert to defense or energy production. I'm simplifying this on a huge scale, but my point is, we know this is happening and starting with kids, especially kids with certain genetic history. So this is also very individualized as far as how people's cell danger response reacts to whatever you're exposed to. And of course, it depends on what you're exposed to. And you consider that the last study I saw said some 30,000 different chemicals have been identified in indoor environments, just not just from what's introduced through sprays and things or off-gassing, but the mixture of these things with everything else. And then if you add the phthalates, the brominated fire retardants, the perfluorocarbons, and all these things that aren't even looked at, and kids are then consuming about a teaspoon to a tablespoon of that dust a day, you can imagine how that might kick off mechanisms like this cell danger theory.
So that gets microplastics are dealing with too. I mean, it's just,
yes, that's exactly right. That's what the phthalates
after another. Hey, Kevin, we got to stop and thank our sponsors, pay a few bills, but we'll be right back second half with Kevin Kennedy. Association sponsors are AIHA, Healthy Workplaces, A Healthier World, AIHA.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA's multidisciplinary membership collects, generates, and disseminates information concerning environmental and occupational health hazards in the built environment at EIA-USA.org. The IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry, IICRC.org. The Restoration Industry Association, the oldest and largest nonprofit professional trade association dedicated to providing leadership and promoting best practices through advocacy, standards, and professional qualifications for the restoration industry at restorationindustry.org. Actionable insights, no more mistakes, no more missed line items in your Xactimate estimates at getinsights.org. Industry sponsors are Particles Plus, feature-rich particle counters and air quality instrumentation. Count on us, particlesplus.com. BioPlanet at byoplanet.com, improving human, animal, and environmental health with electrostatic spray technology and advanced chemistries at byoplanet.com. All right, we're back. Kevin, we got so much to cover. I just want to let you jump right back into it.
All right. Well, I'll just touch on this study. Most of you probably have seen this. This is a fascinating systematic review of a lot of the literature related to various indoor contaminants. But what they did was calculate a pooled disability adjusted life years. For those of you who don't know, a disability adjusted life year shows right there on the slide the sum of years lost, time lived with a disability or attributable to a cause. Okay, well, think about that. I just showed you that 40% of children have some kind of a chronic disease. Children, they have the rest of their life to live. If they're being exposed to these, and these are those with the highest DALYs, they're being exposed to these in their indoor environment, and they're being exposed to most of these either in their home or in a school, then our whole system is sort of geared towards promoting chronic health problems, and is only going to make conditions worse, either for those who are children now or those who have been children 10 years ago who are now adolescents. Hormones and other things are starting to kick in. How does that affect their development? We're seeing explosions in learning disabilities, behavior disabilities, mental health problems, all sorts of complicated health situations for many of these kids that require multiple services that you can imagine an educational system just simply can't keep up with. And then
there's one on there, Kevin. Go back if you would. I've heard this before that it's an indoor air quality issue. Acrolein, whatever the proper pronunciation is. Do you go over that in your class? And how do you? Does anybody test for it?
Very few people test for it. Very few people test for formaldehyde. Very few people test for sulfur dioxide or ozone. Even in urban areas, very few people these days would test for PM10. They're more likely to, and they should be testing for PM2.5 over PM10. But no, very few of these things are tested for. And that's interesting that you said that, because one of the issues that many who are advocating for national policies on indoor air quality, some kind of a national standard, is to monitor for the most common indoor contaminants, to monitor for many of these, along with carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, as things that we would monitor on a regular basis. Japan is starting to do this, have monitors built into the building systems with guidance for what those parameters should be. And if you're not maintaining all of these within what should be either a background level, very low, or within some kind of normal range, like you might do with carbon dioxide, then the systems can be adjusted, or it causes a signal to the building management team to try to figure out what's going on.
Now, I've got two quick comments here. First, can we make these slides available for the viewers?
Oh yeah, I'll give you a copy.
Yeah, we'll get them in the blog, Dawn. And second, Ralph mentioned that industrial hygienists do routinely measure formaldehyde and acrolein, though usually in industrial settings.
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and I did too, and I get that. But that's about worker exposure. That's understanding specifically what that worker's doing, what potential chemicals they may be exposed to doing that work, or knowing what the chemical inventory is at a particular workplace, and then you might be monitoring for that through the daily routine of any of the workforce and whatever the manufacturing or industrial processes might be. I'm talking about anyone, because I'm here about healthy housing, right? Well, in the healthy housing world, yeah, nobody monitors for these things.
We get occasional formaldehyde, but that's
right.
Okay, let's go to the next one, because we got a lot to get to, Kevin.
Yeah, well, I wanted to point out there's been a lot of talk about combustion appliances, gas stoves. Some of you may have, and you even had guests on about gas stoves and gas research. So this has come up. What are the health effects related to combustion? I just went over all of this stuff about cell danger theory and some other things. Well, every day in houses that use combustion appliances inside the home, you are adding these contaminants. You might think that range hood above the stove is efficient and removing these contaminants. We know that it's pretty inefficient. So all of these things are building up at the same time in a child's house. and I'll point to this, when it comes to decarbonizing, and there's a lot of emphasis on this idea of decarbonizing the US economy, in other words, converting over to renewable energy or to solar, wind, et cetera, versus fossil fuels, and also gas combustion in our homes, this represents the benefits from removing the exposure. If you don't expose kids to these things, these are the predicted benefits. Now, if you combine the removal of the exposure to the contaminants with that cell danger theory, they're not now being exposed to the contaminants that might turn on some of these mechanisms. So there's a potential to see significant improvements from doing as much as we can to remove these contaminants from inside homes.
So they're not only not being damaged by the contaminant, but they're not being damaged by their own reaction to the contaminant.
Exactly right.
All right.
Now
And by the way,
I want to be careful
great
about
comments in here, and we're going to get them all on the blog. I just can't get to them all at this point, but they will be on Cliff's blog.
So, and I want to be clear, this isn't, I'm not talking about all children. There are unique genetics and features and home conditions, school conditions, things that play a role. But for most children, by reducing exposure to the combustion byproducts, whatever they happen to be, we should expect to see some significant benefits, not to one child, but to all the children in a particular house.
You know, the whole idea of electrifying homes, it just seems like that is going to be such a tremendous, you're going to get tremendous benefits in other ways, not just energy savings. You're not going to be cooking on a, on a gas oven, and you're not going to have to worry about carbon monoxide from your gas furnace or whatever the case may be. So I think there's a lot of benefits there.
There is a lot of benefits. There are other combustion byproducts. There's obviously a high amount of particulate matter that can be generated in part of that. And it's going to take time. We all have to be reasonable about it, recognize that you can't simply ban these things overnight. Heck, sure. I have a gas stove. It's understanding that right now, for the long-term benefit of our society, we need to phase these things out, just like we're trying to phase out gasoline cars and move towards electric vehicles. But that's not going to happen overnight, and we can't be overly regulatory in our effort. We have to do things that promote the phase out, that facilitate people and encouraging people through various incentives. And there's a lot of great incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act to encourage people to invest in these alternatives, and they'll see a long-term benefit, I believe, from that as well, health benefit.
David Miller points out, well, as long as the electricity doesn't come from coal. So that brings another topic in, is what does the outdoor air do to the indoor air? Now, we're making great improvements over the years, as they said in the Green Book. But as we have more and more demand for electricity, where we get it from will be important as well.
That's exactly right. All of that is true.
Now, should we continue along this line here, Kevin, or do you want to go in?
Pause.
I'm sorry?
You want to pause, or?
Well, no, I just had another topic, but I didn't know if you wanted to continue with these slides.
Let us move on.
All right. At our Healthy Building Summit here up on the mountain a few years back, you were working on using the mapping of large health and housing data sets to develop predictive indices of indoor environmental health impacts on children. So you were looking at large health and housing data sets as a way of kind of predicting what type of indoor environmental impacts would occur with children. Tell our audience a little bit about that work and how that's coming along.
I'd be happy to. So about now 14 years ago, doing this work in homes, going into all these kids' homes, knowing the extent of indoor environmental problems and the impact on kids, we wanted to see if we could look at this from a community perspective. Is there a way we could look at various risk factors in the community and for the actual homes that might tell us which homes actually may have higher risks, higher exposure risks, greater environmental problems than other homes. Because one of the fundamental problems, let's use lead poisoning as an example. So very quickly, houses built before 1978, we think they might have lead-based paint somewhere in the house. Kansas City has had a successful lead health hazard control program since the 1990s, so almost 30 years. They've done 5,000 homes. They've remediated 5,000 homes. That's tremendous. But according to the Census and American Housing Survey, there are some 330,000 homes in Kansas City. Of those, about somewhere around 80 to 90,000 were built before 1978. 80 to 90,000. They've done 5,000 in almost 30 years. We're not going to get to these homes. So we have to be smart about identifying the homes that represent a risk, because one of the key things is people like me who own an old house have renovated the house. They've removed potential hazards. A lot of people have invested in their house. So how do we target, how do we predict indoor environmental risk? A lot of communities across the nation are doing like you see on this slide. They're starting to assemble this data, map this data, understand things about their community and the risks that exist in individual neighborhoods. So in our work, starting in about 2010, we are unique because we were able to work with Children's Mercy, with the hospital electronic health record, and get permission to get copies of the historic records, historic health records. That's easy to get with human subject research because you can look in the past and you're not dealing with current health conditions. So we've been able to assemble hundreds of thousands of records, and we have permission to assemble them up through last year. So we just haven't even had time to get all the records. But as we've assembled them, then we're using them, mapping them like you see here to the individual street address, not to a zip code. That confuses people because that's a mail geography. That's not a social geography. That's not an environmental geography. It doesn't tell you what's happening in the neighborhood. So we're mapping right down to the individual house. And then for each house, we're doing a windshield survey, a drive-by survey. It costs $8 a house. We collect 15 features for the house, 5 of them related specifically to the house itself, others related to the surrounding property and the community infrastructure that supports that house. And we can use that for other questions. Then we have developed and published the geocoding of that health data, the steps that you have to go through to connect the health data, the asthma data, the lead data, from the hospital, typically by a diagnostic code, or from the public health agency by just testing data. The good thing is all that data has the street address. So we can link it to a street address, and then through a careful process that you see here, we can connect it to a location on a map and use that data to create heat maps. Lots of people have done these zip code maps and done some kind of a heat map. The difference for us is that we're using street address. Now, of course, you can't tell the street address from the map I'm showing you here, and that's the beauty of it. You don't want to try to show individual records, but we can use that detail to do some detailed analysis. This is an example of some of the asthma records, and they're the kind of records you'd want to collect. Acute care records, what are the hospital admissions, ED visits, urgent care visits, and what do those represent when you compare them to housing condition. So we did a preliminary study. This was just a simple chi-square association. Can we show an association between asthma, injuries, and other things that are typically associated with the home environment? And we found a significant association. We use that information to apply for grants, and we've used those grants. We've now been fortunate to get 4 different research grants from HUD to do more and more of this mapping, more and more using the housing condition survey and developing predictive indices. And what we've shown, and what we have one published, we have another one that's been submitted for publication. And for lead, we've developed a predictive index using age and housing condition. And what we've shown is age tells you one thing, it is a predictor. But if you combine it with the outside condition, it is a much greater predictor of the likelihood of a child potentially being lead poisoned by that house. So you don't need to use the kids, in other words. You can use the data to identify high-risk housing. And the same is true. We have a brand new grant to look at asthma and developing predictive indices for the risk factors associated with acute care visits for asthma. But what we have done, well, I should stop there. So we're in the middle of doing all of that, but then the next step was this piece on weatherization.
And that's perfect. Let's go the roundup there, Grayson. The roundup. You got some editing to do there, Grayson. Good day. All right, Kevin. Now, you're kind of bringing us into this last piece, the weatherization and home performance, which is something I know you've been really focused on here recently. Let's kind of first just give us a little background on the topic.
Well, so the United States, of course, has invested heavily through DOE in weatherization. Every county in America, in every state, is served by a community action agency that gets both DOE funds and Health and Human Service funds for supporting low-income people. But through that, there's obviously been a tremendous investment in weatherization. Then with the first ARA funding, we saw a major effort to weatherize homes. We did a poor job initially, figured out the right way to do it, added QC protocols, added all sorts of standards and things to improve our ability to weatherize homes. And then with the new funding, we've got new opportunities for weatherization following new protocols, new funding for workforce development. But one of the fundamental problems that has occurred in the past is when when someone applies to have their house weatherized, someone comes to check the house to see if it can be weatherized and check the overall condition of the house. Is there insulation? What kind of windows? What kind of doors? Weather stripping? All these other things. If they see any kind of environmental health or safety problem, they call it defer the house. They can't qualify, they can't do the work because there's water damage in the ceiling and mold growing in the attic. So they cannot weatherize that house. The problem then is those people applied, got rejected, and they can't reapply until there's a time limit on every time you apply. So I believe it's about every 5 years. It depends on each individual state. So in some states, as many as 50 or 60% of the homes that applied for weatherization are deferred.
Wow. And you blew my mind when you told me that earlier in the week.
You couldn't weatherize your house. You're maybe potentially sick or hoping to save on your utility bills, and now you're stuck with whatever the environmental problem that's been found, and you didn't get your house weatherized
because you need a new roof. Maybe that might be the case, right?
That's a possibility, or just patching of the roof or fixing of something, leaky pipes, whatever it is. That was a deferral. Well, in the new legislation there, and even recent memos, and thanks to Larry Zarker, who has a lot of information on this, they have specific funds to make houses weatherization ready, that the individual states have to negotiate with DOE for those funds and how much of those funds can be spent on individual homes. But that's a major change in the policy related to weatherization. And because of that, and because of the work of BPI and the interest in not just doing energy efficiency, DOE, the weatherization workers, there's a whole new interest in healthy housing, in indoor environmental quality in the homes that are weatherized. And I've mentioned to you, and we maybe don't have time to talk about it, but we were contracted to do a study of a weatherization program in Kansas City. Using our big data, we joined asthma data to 6,000 homes that were weatherized. Not all of them had kids with asthma in the home. We found about 250 did. And we looked at the weatherization or the acute care visits of the kids before the house was weatherized and after the house was weatherized. And we found up to a 40% drop in acute care visits just because they had the house weatherized. This is called a natural experiment. They didn't sign up for their some kind of health benefit. They signed up to save a few bucks on their utilities, and we were able to look at the natural impact of that on their health and find a dramatic drop in these acute care visits. We need to explore what happened there, but it clearly says weatherizing your home does something to significantly improve the indoor environment.
That leads me to a question that I didn't I didn't send to you here, but I know in the past we have talked about how with at the time the Affordable Care Act, that there may be money available for mitigation of issues in homes through insurance. Did this, eh, how are the insurance companies health insurance companies, how are they viewing this information if they're looking at it at all?
That's a great question. And as you know, I've been involved in trying to get a reimbursement from health insurance companies for environmental interventions in homes for asthma kids, who we know the research is very clear as far as the benefit. And American Academy of Pediatrics has a report on that. We know there are benefits, and yet we can't get health insurance to step up and pay for things. So what happens, they have claimed, and I summarize it as the wrong pockets problem. And what that means is if they invest in a chronically ill patient's house, and then if that patient moves, then they've invested in something that they don't see a long-term benefit from. So they
Oh,
hesitate to do that. What they are showing a willingness to benefit or to invest in are the mobile interventions. So that's the vacuum, that's the room air, portable room air filtration unit, that's better quality cleaning supplies, that's the in-home education. They are comfortable with those kind of components, and of late have been far more willing to support those kind of interventions because people can take those things with them. They can also use those in rental property where maybe they don't have as much control. But the thing that's also changed is many of those asthma programs are now partnering or collaborating with healthy housing programs that are usually through public health or nonprofit organizations. A lot of nonprofit organizations are applying and being awarded healthy home grants from HUD. So they're able to partner with these health systems, as are weatherization. There are wonderful programs called Weatherization Plus Health, where a health program has partnered with the weatherization. They can refer their patients or the managed care patients to the weatherization program for work on the house through this kind of a collaboration. So there's all sorts of collaborations, and a lot of my students in the new classes are coming from those collaborations and are now, that's one of the reasons they don't have this knowledge. They're excited to be involved in healthy housing, but they didn't come historically from any kind of a housing sector. They may have come from the health sector, the nonprofit sector, or some other place. Maybe they have a background in social work, and now they are doing healthy housing.
and it goes back to what you were saying earlier about people just don't have that background in building science, and they've got to get that somehow.
Well, that's training. And that's certainly
Yes.
what I've been involved in and been involved with BPI here. We're developing, and we're trying to work with some federal agencies to get funding to support some new certifications, because if you have certifications, the states can say, oh, well, if you have this certification, then we feel comfortable because we know you passed a test or you went through a skills evaluation to show you have the ability to do this assessment and evaluation of homes. So I've been working with Larry and with BPI on the development of 3 new certifications, one for those health educators. Roughly right now, we're calling it a healthy home advocate. Then we're developing one that's more tailored to the HUD grantees and housing professionals called, we're calling it roughly healthy home assessment practitioner. These are draft names, don't write them down. And that's a person who has the knowledge and skills to do a good a visual assessment, possibly supported by some very simple diagnostic equipment like a CO detector, a combustible gas meter, a moisture meter. And then BPI currently has a Healthy Home Evaluator Advanced certification, and we're proposing expanding that and offering an alternative that doesn't require the energy background, but does require some proof of indoor air quality skills assessment. We're still needing to tease through all of that and convene subject matter experts, et cetera. But that would create 3 different career tracks, 3 different professional certifications connecting to people who educate in homes, people who do basic assessments, and people who need to do advanced diagnostics as part of their work. That's what we're working towards, because there is such a need in the workforce, just a tremendous need. And in doing that, working on those certifications, IAQA reached out So IAQA and BPI are now talking about how they might collaborate on some of this professional training. I am really excited about that. I see that as a new avenue. That I think that was a big mistake years ago when IAQA walked away from the Home Health Committee. There was some real opportunity there, and we're coming back full circle to real opportunity, because there is a workforce that is going to be in the tens of thousands that need this kind of knowledge, this kind of training, and the funding is out there right now. States are just finally negotiating their contracts with DOE, and HUD has they can't give the money away fast enough. There's so much of their funding available for healthy housing.
Wow. That's just all great information. And by the way, I think we met through IAQA many years ago
That's
at a
right.
conference. And, it'd be really nice
Way
to
back.
see them kind of come back and get strong again.
Yeah, I agree.
And relationship with BPI would be a great thing. And I think they've got some good things going on. I hope they can continue. Before we go, well, there was one other one here I wanted to make sure we got to. BPI. Oh, that was it. The IAQA. Okay. Before we go, anything we really should probably do another show and kind of get into a little more detail and finish the slides and so on. But what is there anything you'd like to add, or anything you can maybe tease us with respect to what's coming down the road? And also, I guess, we're getting older. We're going to be retiring here. What are your thoughts on how we're going to be able to, how do we do a better job of training the people that are going to replace us?
Well, we're not doing a very good job right now, in my opinion. We used to have a healthy home training network, but that disappeared in 2016, so almost 10 years ago.
Wow.
BPI does have a testing network, but and there's something like 115 testing centers across the country, but they don't all teach healthy homes. And you tell me, if I'm a guy who wants to become an indoor air professional, where do I go for training?
That's a darn good question, Kevin.
I'll be honest with the industrial hygienist. I've been through industrial hygienist training. I've seen what they teach, and I had disputes with how they taught some of the stuff they did related to indoor environments and analytical chemistry and some other stuff, because that was my background. And that's not a path for the thousands of people I'm talking about. They don't need that worker exposure level, which is fairly advanced. And all respect to AIHA and to industrial hygiene, they do amazing work. Don't get me wrong, but that's not what this marketplace may need. We need people with that strong building knowledge, people who have people skills to work with clients at all income levels, who are supported by their program. And right now, there are so many people I can see by names, people I know who are older like us, who we should be preparing the next generation. We should be doing as much as we can to work with colleagues, younger colleagues, and get train the trainers, develop train the trainers. I've been fortunate with BPI to do train the trainers, and as part of this proposal for these new certifications, we're going to do some train the trainers as part of that. Another piece of that that we're proposing is collaborations with technical high schools, collaborations with community colleges, with technical colleges. We need more people coming right out of class who have already had some knowledge, some education related to healthy housing. It should be fundamental. Honestly, everybody in high school ought to take a healthy housing class.
We all live in a home. We all ought to learn
right.
a little something about it,
Exactly right.
It's. I wonder if there's some way, like maybe HUD or EPA could somehow work with groups like BPI and the Environmental Information Association and IAQA and ASHRAE and AIHA and somehow pull this all together so that we can really make it a little more formalized in the way we handle it. It just seems like it's all shotgun.
It is shotgun, and I agree. There ought to be some kind of a committee that oversees. I talked about these certifications, and we've talked about an indoor air quality standard. And one of the things I brought up, I was at that Johns Hopkins convening on a national strategy, and I brought up that one of the problems, it's great to have this strategy, but who's going to implement it? It's
Right.
going to be facility managers. Where do they get their training?
Right. And where do they get the time to do this?
Yeah, that they should be paid for that time, and then that should be included in their job. That if you apply for this job, you have to have this certification. And on a side note, I had one of my students tell me, now at my public health agency, to move from a class 1 to a class 2 public health professional, we have to take your class.
Interesting.
Now, I'm not trying to say that's credit for me. That's saying that healthy housing knowledge, that public health agency said, you need to have that knowledge to move up. We need to have that kind of requirement. If build it, they will come, right? If you build those certifications and requirements into any school facility manager who's going to manage school buildings that have young children in them, ought to be certified as some kind of an indoor air quality or indoor environmental professional.
Yeah, and if they're not, they should have to get it within a certain period of time.
Just think how eye-opening that would be for those school facility people. I can tell you from the years of work that Luke and I did consulting with school districts, they are clueless about building science and about indoor air quality. And they take offense when we start pointing out ways they operate their building that contribute to mold problems that they don't even understand why it would be contributing to it. They just know they suddenly developed a mold problem.
And it looks like more work.
Yeah.
Brother Kevin, thank you so much. Before we go, any final thoughts or questions or comments?
No, appreciate you having me on. Appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for running over a little bit and letting us wrap up the discussion. And thanks to all of you that are attending today and listening in. We appreciate it.
You bring out a great group of audience members here. I tell you, thanks again, Kevin Kennedy. Always a pleasure. I want to thank my guest, Kevin Kennedy. I want to thank the Z-Man. He'll be doing his blog. He's going to listen to the show later and write the blog. We'll get that out on Wednesday of next week. Our engineer, Grayson, Gone Fishing Fisher. And most importantly, our loyal audience and our sponsors will be back next Friday at noon with the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for
Kevin.